I went to urgent care for pink eye. The doctor asked, "When were you exposed to radiation?" I went to an urgent care clinic at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night because my eye was red. The doctor looked at me, carefully closed the door, and asked in a low, controlled voice, "When exactly were you exposed to radiation?" In that moment, my entire world collapsed. My name is Daniel Carter, and until that Tuesday, my life was gloriously ordinary. I worked as a data security analyst for a medical technology company called MedTech Solutions. Nothing glamorous. Basically, I spent my days analyzing system logs, looking for vulnerabilities in hospital software, making sure patient information stayed private. Office work, cold coffee, endless Zoom meetings. My routine was predictably boring. I woke up at 7, gym at 7:30, office at 9. Lunch always at 12:30, usually a chicken sandwich from the corner deli. Left at 6, went back to my one-bedroom apartment downtown, made simple dinner, watched Netflix, slept. End. Repeat. It was a Monday when I first felt the symptoms. Nothing dramatic, just my left eye itching a bit. I thought it was allergies. Spring had come early, and the pollen was unbearable. I rubbed my eye a few times during a morning meeting, apologized to my webcam, and moved on with my day. By Tuesday afternoon, the itching had gotten worse. My eye was starting to feel gritty, like there was sand under my eyelid. I went to the bathroom, splashed some water on my face, looked in the mirror. My left eye was definitely pink, the white part streaked with angry red lines. Pink eye, I thought. Annoying, but common. I'd had it once as a kid. I stopped by a pharmacy on my way home, bought some over-the-counter eye drops, the kind that promised relief in minutes. I used them religiously that evening, every 2 hours like the bottle said. But by 9 o'clock that night, my eye wasn't just pink anymore. It was swollen, hot to the touch, and the redness had deepened to an alarming crimson. The whites of my eye looked like raw meat, and then there was the discharge, a thick, yellowish gunk that kept crusting over my eyelashes. That's when I decided I needed to see a doctor. My regular physician's office was closed, obviously. So I looked up the nearest urgent care clinic, grabbed my insurance card, and drove myself there, one eye half shut, squinting at traffic lights. The waiting room was nearly empty. Just me, a teenage kid with his arm in a makeshift sling, and an elderly woman coughing into a tissue. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, that distinctive urgent care smell of antiseptic and anxiety hanging in the air. I checked in with the receptionist, a tired-looking woman who barely glanced at my eye, and sat down to wait. I noticed something odd on the intake form. There was a question I'd never seen before at a doctor's office. Have you been in contact with any hazardous materials in the past 30 days? I checked no, without thinking much about it, and handed the clipboard back. I waited maybe 20 minutes before a nurse called my name. She led me down a narrow hallway lined with exam rooms, took my vitals, blood pressure normal, temperature normal, pulse normal, and left me sitting on the crinkly paper of the exam table. The room was small, sterile white walls, a poster about hand washing, the smell of rubbing alcohol. I sat there, my eye throbbing, wondering how long it would take to get a prescription for antibiotic drops. That's when the doctor walked in. He wasn't what I expected. He was young, maybe early 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. But it was his expression that caught me off guard. He looked at me, then at my chart, then back at me. And his face went very still, the way people's faces do when they're trying not to show alarm. He closed the door quietly, deliberately, and that's when my stomach started to twist. And speaking of things that caught me off guard, before we continue with this incredible story, I have an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Take a quick look at that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming. And while you're there, hit that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know each of the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Now, where was I? Oh yes, the doctor had just closed the door with that look on his face that made my pulse quicken. He pulled up a rolling stool, sat down directly in front of me, closer than doctors usually sit, and said, "Mr. Carter, I need to ask you a very specific question, and I need you to think carefully before you answer." His voice was calm but urgent. "When were you exposed to radiation?" I stared at him. My mouth went dry. "I'm sorry, what? Radiation? I haven't been. I work in an office. I've never been exposed to radiation." He didn't look convinced. He pulled out a small penlight and leaned in to examine my eye more closely. "May I?" I nodded, and he gently pulled down my lower eyelid, shone the light directly into my eye. I could see him studying something, his jaw tightening. "Mr. Carter, what you have isn't conjunctivitis. What you have is acute radiation keratitis. It's inflammation of the cornea caused by ionizing radiation exposure. This isn't something you get from pollen or a virus. This comes from radiation." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Radiation. I felt my hands start to shake. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I haven't been anywhere near radiation. I work at a computer all day. I've never even had an X-ray recently. You must be wrong." He shook his head slowly. "I'm not wrong. I've seen this before, exactly twice. Once in a radiology tech who wasn't wearing proper protection, and once in a patient who worked at a nuclear power plant. The pattern of damage to your eye, the specific way the blood vessels are dilated, the cellular breakdown I'm seeing, it's textbook radiation exposure." My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "But how? Where would I even come into contact with radiation?" The doctor stood up, crossed his arms, and asked me the question that would change everything. "Tell me about your work, Mr. Carter. What exactly do you do? And I need you to be very specific." So I told him. I explained that I worked for MedTech Solutions, that we developed and maintained security systems for hospital networks. I told him about my typical day, the boring, mundane reality of spreadsheets and security logs. He listened, his expression growing more concerned. "Have you been working on anything new recently? Any new clients? Any new projects? Anything unusual?" I thought about it. "Well, yes, actually. About 3 weeks ago, our company took on a new contract. We're doing a security audit for a network of oncology clinics, cancer treatment centers. They use radiation therapy equipment." The doctor's eyes widened slightly. "And have you been on site at any of these clinics?" I nodded. "Yes, twice. I had to physically inspect their server rooms, their IT infrastructure. But I was nowhere near the treatment rooms. I never went near any of the machines." He was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "Mr. Carter, I'm going to be very direct with you. The level of radiation exposure required to cause this kind of eye damage doesn't happen by accident. This isn't ambient radiation. This isn't walking past a machine. Someone would have to be exposed to a concentrated source, directly, for an extended period. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" The room felt like it was closing in. "Are you saying someone did this to me on purpose?" He held up his hands. "I'm saying this needs to be investigated, and you need to be tested immediately. Radiation exposure doesn't just affect your eyes. Depending on the dose, it can affect your bone marrow, your organs, your DNA. I'm going to refer you to a specialist, a radiation oncologist, and I'm also legally required to report this to the state health department." My heart was pounding now, a sick, heavy beat. "Am I going to die?" The doctor's face softened just a little. "I don't know yet, but we need to act fast." He wrote down a name and number on a prescription pad, tore it off, and handed it to me. "Dr. Elizabeth Nolan. She's one of the best radiation specialists in the state. Tell her I sent you. She'll see you tomorrow. I'll call ahead. In the meantime, I'm going to take some blood, and I'm giving you these eye drops to manage the inflammation. But Mr. Carter," he looked me straight in the eye, "you need to figure out where this exposure came from, and you need to figure it out fast. Because if you were exposed once, you could be exposed again. I drove home in a daze. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. Radiation poisoning. Someone had exposed me to radiation. But who and why? When I got back to my apartment, I sat in the dark for a long time, just thinking. I pulled out my laptop and started going through my work calendar, trying to retrace every step I'd taken over the past 3 weeks. The oncology clinic visits. I pulled up the details. I'd been to 2 locations, both in the same week. ClearPath Cancer Center on the north side and Horizon Oncology in the suburbs. Both times, I'd met with their IT directors, inspected their server rooms, reviewed their network security protocols, standard stuff. But now I thought about those visits differently. At ClearPath, the IT director, a nervous guy named Marcus, had walked me through the entire facility. I remembered passing by treatment rooms, seeing the heavy lead doors, the warning signs about radiation. But I never went inside. At Horizon, it was a woman named Dr. Farah Chen who gave me the tour. She was friendly, professional, showed me everything I needed to see. Again, I stayed in the IT areas, never got close to treatment equipment. But then I remembered something. Something small. Something that hadn't seemed important at the time. At Horizon, Dr. Chen had offered me coffee. I'd been there for almost 3 hours, and she'd brought me a cup, said it was fresh from the break room. I'd drunk the whole thing. And then, about an hour later, I'd felt nauseous, just a little queasy. I chalked it up to too much caffeine on an empty stomach. But what if it wasn't the coffee itself? What if something had been in the coffee? I pulled up everything I could find about radiation poisoning. The symptoms were terrifying. Nausea, fatigue, skin burns, hair loss, and in severe cases, organ failure and death. But the early symptoms, the ones that appeared in the first few days, were exactly what I was experiencing. Eye irritation. Mild nausea, fatigue. I'd been so tired lately, I'd assumed I was just burned out from work. I looked at the business card the urgent care doctor had given me. Dr. Elizabeth Nolan, Radiation Oncology. I would call her first thing in the morning, but right now, I needed answers. I needed to know if my suspicions were even possible. Could someone really poison you with radiation? I started researching, and what I found made my blood run cold. There was a famous case, Alexander Litvinenko, a former Russian spy who was poisoned with polonium-210, a radioactive isotope. He'd been given tea laced with the substance. He died 3 weeks later. The symptoms started with his eyes. Then there was the case of the Goiânia accident in Brazil, where scavengers broke into an abandoned hospital and found a radiation therapy source. They didn't know what it was, played with it, gave pieces to their families. Several people died horrible deaths. Radiation could absolutely be used as a poison. It was invisible, odorless, tasteless. And in the right form, it could be slipped into food or drink without anyone knowing. My hands were shaking as I typed. I pulled up the security footage access for MedTech Solutions. As a security analyst, I had administrative access to our logs, our systems, everything. I started looking for anomalies, anything unusual around the time of my clinic visits. And then I found it. On the day I visited Horizon Oncology, someone had accessed my employee file. Not just accessed it. They'd opened my medical records, my emergency contact information, my home address. The access came from an IP address I didn't recognize. I traced it. It was a VPN, masked, routed through 3 different countries. But the timestamp was precise, exactly 2 hours after I'd left Horizon. Someone had been watching me. I felt sick. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Someone at one of those clinics, or someone connected to them, had deliberately exposed me to radiation. But why? What did I know that was worth killing me for? I went back through my audit reports. I'd found some security vulnerabilities at both clinics. Standard stuff. Outdated firewalls, weak passwords, unencrypted patient data. I'd flagged them in my reports. Recommended fixes. Nothing that seemed worth murdering someone over. But then I saw something I'd missed before. In the Horizon system logs, there were patient records being accessed at odd hours. 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Always the same user ID. But it didn't match any of the staff I'd interviewed. I dug deeper. The records being accessed were all for patients receiving high-dose radiation therapy. And the access pattern was strange. Someone was downloading these files, complete treatment histories, radiation dosages, imaging results. They were being copied to an external server. I felt my pulse quicken. This was data theft. Someone at Horizon was stealing patient records. But not just any records. Records of people receiving radiation treatment. People who were already sick. People who were vulnerable. And then I saw the pattern. Over the past 6 months, 12 patients from Horizon Oncology had died. Not unusual for a cancer center, except these weren't patients in late-stage disease. These were people who were responding well to treatment. People who should have lived. And all 12 had their records accessed by the unknown user in the days before their deaths. I sat back, my mind reeling. Was someone at Horizon deliberately killing patients? And had they tried to kill me because I'd stumbled onto evidence of it during my security audit? I looked at the clock. It was 2 in the morning. I grabbed my phone and called the number the urgent care doctor had given me. It went to voicemail. Dr. Nolan, my name is Daniel Carter. I was referred to you by a colleague for radiation exposure. I need to see you immediately. I believe I was poisoned deliberately, and I think I know why. Please call me back as soon as you get this. I hung up and stared at my laptop screen. I had to go back to Horizon. I had to find out who that unknown user was. But I couldn't do it alone. If someone had already tried to kill me once, they'd try again. I thought about going to the police, but what would I tell them? That I had a hunch? That my eye was red and a doctor thought it might be radiation? I needed proof. Hard evidence. I needed to get into Horizon's physical servers and trace the data theft directly. I checked my calendar. I had a follow-up meeting scheduled at Horizon in 2 days, a routine check-in to discuss my audit findings. I could use that as cover to access their server room again, but this time I'd be prepared. I'd bring a portable radiation detector, a Geiger counter. If there was a radiation source being used to poison people, maybe I could find it. I spent the rest of the night preparing. I ordered a Geiger counter online, overnight shipping. I reviewed the layout of Horizon's facility, memorizing every hallway, every room, every exit. And I made copies of everything I'd found, encrypted them, and sent them to a secure cloud server. If something happened to me, at least someone would know what I'd discovered. Wednesday morning, I woke up to a call from Dr. Nolan. Her voice was calm but urgent. Mr. Carter, I got your message. I need you to come in immediately. I've already cleared my schedule. How soon can you be here? I was at her office within an hour. It was in a large medical complex, all glass and steel, the kind of building that screamed cutting-edge medicine. She met me in her office, a tall woman in her 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She shook my hand and gestured for me to sit. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about the urgent care visit, about my work at the oncology clinics, about my suspicions, about the data theft I'd discovered. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing more grave with every word. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mr. Carter, I'm going to run a full panel of tests. Blood work, bone marrow biopsy, full body scan. We need to determine exactly how much radiation you've been exposed to and what kind. But I want you to understand something. If your suspicions are correct, if someone deliberately poisoned you, then you're in danger. And not just from the radiation." She leaned forward. "I'm going to report this to the authorities, but in the meantime, you need to be very, very careful." The tests took most of the day. Blood draws, scans, biopsies. By the time I left the medical complex, I was exhausted and terrified. Dr. Nolan said she'd have preliminary results by tomorrow. I drove home, constantly checking my rearview mirror, convinced I was being followed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in my apartment made me jump. Every creak, every distant siren, every footstep in the hallway outside my door. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my Geiger counter on the nightstand next to me. Wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake, wondering if I should have just kept my mouth shut, done my job, and walked away. But I couldn't, because if someone was killing patients at Horizon, if someone had tried to kill me to cover it up, then I was the only one who knew, the only one who could stop it. Thursday morning, I got the call from Dr. Nolan. "Mr. Carter, we have your results. You need to come in, now." I was back in her office within 30 minutes. She had a stack of printouts in front of her, test results, and her face was pale. "Daniel, you were exposed to a significant dose of ionizing radiation. Based on your blood work and the damage to your eye, I estimate between 200 and 400 millisieverts. That's roughly equivalent to 20 to 40 full-body CT scans. It's not immediately lethal, but it's enough to cause serious long-term health effects. Cancer, organ damage, infertility." I felt the room spin. How? How was I exposed to that much radiation without knowing? She shook her head. "That's what I can't figure out. Radiation at that dose would require either prolonged exposure to a moderate source or brief exposure to a very intense source. And based on the pattern of damage, it was localized. Your eye was the primary point of contact. Localized. My eye. And then it hit me. The coffee. The coffee, Dr. Chen had given me at Horizon. I'd drunk it. I'd held the cup right up to my face for almost an hour. If there was something radioactive in that cup or on that cup, it would have been inches from my eye the entire time. "Dr. Nolan, I think it was in a coffee cup, or on a coffee cup. Is that possible?" Her eyes widened. "Yes, if someone had access to a radioactive isotope, something like iridium-192 or cobalt-60, they could coat the inside of a cup. You'd never see it, never taste it. But holding it close to your face for an extended period, that could absolutely cause the exposure you're showing." I felt rage building in my chest. Someone had poisoned me. Deliberately. Carefully. They'd handed me a weapon disguised as hospitality. "I'm going back to Horizon," I said. "Tomorrow. I have a meeting scheduled, and I'm going to find out who did this." Dr. Nolan grabbed my arm. "Daniel, no, you need to let the police handle this. If you're right, these people are killers. They won't hesitate to finish what they started." But I shook my head. "The police won't have enough to act on. Not yet. I need proof. I need to catch them in the act, and I need to do it before anyone else dies." She stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. "Then at least take this." She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a small electronic device, about the size of a USB drive. It's a dosimeter. It measures radiation exposure in real time. If you get anywhere near a radioactive source, it'll alert you. It might save your life. I took it, clipped it to my belt. Thank you. Friday morning, I drove to Horizon Oncology for my scheduled follow-up meeting. My Geiger counter was in my bag, disguised as a laptop charger. The dosimeter was hidden under my shirt. I was terrified, but I was also angry. Someone had tried to kill me, and I was going to find out who. Dr. Chen greeted me in the lobby. Same friendly smile, same professional demeanor. "Daniel, good to see you again. Thank you for coming back. I've reviewed your security report, and I wanted to discuss some of your recommendations." She led me down the hallway toward the conference room, but I wasn't interested in the conference room. I needed to get to the server room. "Actually, Dr. Chen, before we meet, I'd like to do a quick check on your server logs, just to make sure the vulnerabilities I flagged haven't been exploited." She hesitated just for a fraction of a second. "Oh, that won't be necessary. Our IT team has already implemented your fixes." But I saw it, the flicker of something in her eyes. Nervousness. Fear. I insist, I said, keeping my voice calm. It's part of my standard follow-up protocol. It'll only take a few minutes. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, follow me. She led me to the server room, unlocked the door with her keycard. The room was cold, filled with the hum of machines, racks of servers blinking with green and amber lights. I pulled out my laptop, connected to their network, but I was also watching the Geiger counter in my bag. The needle hadn't moved. No radiation here. Dr. Chen, would you mind getting me some water? I asked. I'm feeling a bit dehydrated. She nodded. Of course, I'll be right back. The moment she left, I moved fast. I pulled up the access logs, found the unknown user ID I'd seen before. I traced it, and there it was. The user account was registered to Dr. Sarah Chen. She was the one stealing patient records. She was the one accessing files in the middle of the night. But why? And then I saw the second piece of the puzzle, the external server where the data was being sent. I traced the IP address. It led to a medical research company called GenRight Solutions. I looked them up. They specialized in experimental cancer treatments, cutting-edge therapies, FDA trials, and they paid top dollar for patient data. Real-world treatment outcomes, radiation dosages, response rates. Dr. Chen was selling patient information to a research company, but that didn't explain the deaths. Unless I dug deeper. GenRight Solutions had been flagged by the FDA twice for ethical violations, unauthorized experiments, using patient data without consent. And then I found it. A buried internal email leaked in a lawsuit 3 years ago. GenRight had been experimenting with targeted radiation poisoning as a method of accelerating cancer progression in terminal patients to study rapid tumor growth. They'd been shut down, fined millions. But what if they'd started again? What if Dr. Chen wasn't just selling data? What if she was actively experimenting on her own patients? The door opened. Dr. Chen walked back in, holding a glass of water. She handed it to me, and I saw her eyes flick to my laptop screen. She saw what I was looking at. Her expression changed. The friendly mask dropped. You shouldn't have come back, Daniel. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. You poisoned me. And you've been killing your own patients, experimenting on them. She didn't deny it. They were terminal. They were going to die anyway. GenRight is developing treatments that could save millions of lives. Someone has to make the sacrifices for progress. I felt sick. They trusted you. She shrugged. And you should have stayed out of it. That coffee cup was coated with iridium-192, a thin film, just enough to cause some eye damage, some nausea, make you sick enough to stay home, stay quiet. But you kept digging. She reached into her pocket. I didn't wait to see what she was pulling out. I ran. I bolted out of the server room, down the hallway, my Geiger counter suddenly screaming in my bag. The dosimeter on my belt was beeping frantically. She was carrying a radiation source. Right now, I burst through the exit door, out into the parking lot, fumbling for my phone. I dialed 911. This is an emergency. I'm at Horizon Oncology. A doctor here is poisoning patients with radiation. She just tried to attack me. Send police. Send hazmat. Send everyone. Within 10 minutes, the parking lot was swarming with police cars, fire trucks, hazmat teams in full protective gear. Dr. Chen was arrested as she tried to leave through a side exit. They found a lead-lined case in her office containing 3 vials of iridium-192, enough to kill dozens of people. The investigation that followed was massive. Federal agents, FDA officials, state health inspectors. They exhumed the bodies of the 12 patients who had died. All of them showed signs of acute radiation poisoning, deliberately administered through their IV lines during treatment. Dr. Chen had been injecting them with radioactive isotopes, then selling the data on their rapid decline to GenRight Solutions for hundreds of thousands of dollars. She'd been doing it for almost 2 years. Ken Wright's executives were arrested. Dr. Chen was charged with 12 counts of first-degree murder. My name was all over the news for a few weeks. The data analyst who'd uncovered a serial killer hiding in plain sight. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a survivor. Dr. Nolan told me I'd need monitoring for the rest of my life. The radiation exposure had been significant, but not lethal. My eye eventually healed, though I still have a small scar on my cornea, a permanent reminder. I left MedTech Solutions. I couldn't go back to analyzing logs and security protocols, not after what I'd seen. Now I work as a consultant for hospitals, specifically focused on identifying internal threats, protecting patients from the people who are supposed to protect them. I think about those 12 people a lot. The ones who trusted Dr. Chen. The ones who died believing they were getting the best care possible. They deserved better. We all do. My vindication came not from the news coverage or the trial, but from a letter I received 6 months later. It was from the daughter of one of Dr. Chen's victims, an older man named Robert Hayes who'd been undergoing treatment for prostate cancer. He'd been responding well, until he wasn't. His daughter wrote to thank me. She said that for months she'd blamed herself for not pushing harder, for not asking more questions. But now she knew the truth. It wasn't her fault. It was murder. And because of what I'd found, she could finally grieve properly. She could finally let go of the guilt. That letter sits on my desk now, next to a small Geiger counter I keep as a reminder. The world is full of dangers we can't see. Radiation, poison, people who smile while they hurt you. But it's also full of people who refuse to look away. People who ask the hard questions. People who keep digging even when it's terrifying. I went to urgent care for pink eye. I left knowing I'd been poisoned, and in the process, I stopped a killer who'd hidden behind a white coat and a warm smile. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's simple. Trust your instincts, question everything, and never, ever ignore the warning signs, no matter how small they seem. Because sometimes, a red eye isn't just an infection. Sometimes, it's the first clue to something much, much darker.